Every day, somewhere in the world, something happens that shouldn't. Something dark. Something that makes you lock your doors a little tighter at night. I'm Jacob, and I collect these stories. These are 3 disturbing true Airbnb horror stories. Story 1. The Camera in the Smoke Detector. In March of 2023, a woman named Rachel booked an Airbnb in Austin, Texas for a long weekend getaway with her boyfriend. She was a nurse who had been working double shifts for months, and she desperately needed a break. The listing looked perfect. A cozy 1-bedroom guest house behind the host's main property. Private entrance, highly rated. The photos showed a clean, modern space with string lights on the patio and a small garden out back. They arrived on a Friday evening around 7 p.m. The host, a man in his early 50s named Glenn, met them at the gate and walked them to the guest house. He was friendly enough, a little too eager to chat, Rachel thought, but nothing alarming. He showed them where the towels were, how to work the thermostat, and pointed out the coffee maker. Before he left, he mentioned that the property had security cameras on the exterior for safety purposes. He said it was all disclosed in the listing, which it was. Rachel had seen it and didn't think much of it. That first night was uneventful. They ordered takeout, watched a movie on the small TV mounted on the wall, and went to bed early. Rachel remembers feeling relaxed for the first time in months. The next morning, she woke up before her boyfriend. She made coffee and sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone. That's when she noticed something strange. There was a small red light blinking on the smoke detector directly above the bed. At first, she assumed it was just the normal indicator light, but she kept glancing at it. Something about it felt off. The light wasn't steady like most smoke detectors. It blinked in a rhythm, almost like it was recording. She told herself she was being paranoid. She'd been watching too many true crime documentaries, but the thought wouldn't leave her. Later that afternoon, while her boyfriend was in the shower, Rachel pulled a chair over to the smoke detector. She stood on it and looked closely at the device. That's when her stomach dropped. There was a small hole in the center of the smoke detector, and behind that hole, she could see the faint reflection of a camera lens. Her hands were shaking as she twisted the smoke detector off the ceiling. Inside, hardwired to the unit, was a small camera with a micro SD card slot. The camera was pointed directly at the bed. Rachel didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, frozen, trying to process what she was looking at. Her boyfriend came out of the bathroom and immediately saw her face. She handed him the smoke detector without saying a word. They packed their bags in under 5 minutes. They didn't say goodbye to the host. They didn't even close the door behind them. They just got in the car and drove straight to the police station. When officers arrived at the property later that evening, Glenn, the host, was sitting on his back porch drinking a beer. He didn't resist when they told him why they were there. He didn't even seem surprised. A forensic search of the guest house revealed 2 additional hidden cameras. One was inside the bathroom vent, pointed directly at the shower. The other was behind a decorative mirror in the living room. But the worst part came later. When investigators examined the SD cards, they found hundreds of videos, dozens of different guests, men, women, couples, families, all recorded without their knowledge. Some of the footage dated back over 3 years. Glenn was arrested and charged with multiple counts of voyeurism and unlawful surveillance. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. Rachel later learned that she and her boyfriend were the first guests to ever notice the cameras. For 3 years, Glenn had been recording people in that guest house, and no one had any idea. She told investigators that the thing that haunts her most isn't the camera itself. It's the thought of how many people stayed in that room before her, how many people slept in that bed, completely unaware that they were being watched. She never used Airbnb again? Story 2. He never left. In the summer of 2022, a college student named Derek rented an Airbnb in Portland, Oregon for an internship. He was 21 years old and had never lived away from home before. The internship was unpaid, so he couldn't afford a regular apartment. Airbnb was his only option. He found a listing for a basement unit in a house owned by a woman named Linda. The price was right, the location was close to his office, and the reviews were mostly positive. A few guests mentioned that the host was a little quirky, but nothing concerning. Derek moved in on a Sunday afternoon. Linda was there to greet him. She was in her late 60s, soft-spoken, and seemed harmless. She showed him around the basement, a small bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchenette. There was a door at the top of the stairs that led to the main house, but Linda assured him it would stay locked at all times. "You'll have complete privacy," she told him. "I never come down here." The first few weeks were fine. Derek went to work, came home, made dinner, and went to bed. He rarely saw Linda. Sometimes he'd hear her footsteps above him late at night, but that was normal. Old houses make noise. People move around. Then about 3 weeks in, Derek started noticing small things. One morning he woke up and his laptop had been moved. He always left it on the left side of his desk, closed. But that morning, it was on the right side, open. He assumed he must have forgotten, even though he was certain he hadn't touched it. A few days later, he noticed that his laundry, which he had left in a pile on the floor, had been folded and placed neatly on his bed. He asked Linda about it the next time he saw her. She smiled and said she hadn't been in the basement at all. She said maybe he was just stressed from work and forgetting things. Derek wanted to believe her, but the incidents kept happening. His phone charger would be unplugged when he swore he left it plugged in. His toiletries would be rearranged. One night he came home and his bed was made, but he never made his bed. He started locking his bedroom door at night, even though there was no reason to. Linda had a key to the basement entrance, but not to his bedroom. At least that's what she told him. Then came the night that changed everything. It was around 2:30 in the morning. Derek woke up to a sound he couldn't identify at first. It was faint, rhythmic, almost like breathing. He lay completely still, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince himself it was just the house settling. But the sound didn't stop. It was coming from inside the room. Sound. Slow, measured breathing, barely audible. Derek reached for his phone on the nightstand. He turned on the flashlight and aimed it toward the closet. The door was cracked open about 3 inches. He knew. He had closed that door before going to bed. He always did. It was a habit. His heart was pounding as he got out of bed and walked slowly toward the closet. He told himself it was nothing. Maybe the latch was loose. Maybe the door just swung open on its own. He pulled the door open. Inside the closet, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest, was Linda. Sound. Sharp, dissonant tone, brief and jarring. She was staring up at him with wide eyes, completely silent. She wasn't moving. She wasn't blinking. She was just sitting there, watching him. Derek screamed. He stumbled backward and fell onto the bed. Linda didn't react. She just kept staring. He grabbed his phone and his keys and ran out of the basement. He didn't even put on shoes. He got in his car and drove to a friend's apartment across town. He called the police from there. When officers arrived at the house, Linda was still sitting in the closet. She hadn't moved. She told the officers she didn't remember how she got there. She said she must have been sleepwalking. But when they searched the basement more thoroughly, they found something disturbing. Behind a panel in the back of the closet, there was a small crawl space. Inside the crawl space, they found a sleeping bag, a flashlight, some bottled water, and a notebook. The notebook was filled with entries about Derek, his schedule, what time he woke up, what time he went to bed, what he ate for dinner, what shows he watched on his laptop. She had been watching him for weeks, not from upstairs, from inside the walls. Linda was evaluated by a psychiatrist and deemed unfit to stand trial. She was placed in a mental health facility, and her Airbnb listing was permanently removed. Derek never went back to that house. He left all of his belongings behind. He said he didn't want anything that had been in that room. To this day, he still checks his closet before going to sleep, every single night. Story 3. The Guest Who Stayed Too Long. This story comes from a man named Victor, who in 2021 decided to rent out his guest bedroom on Airbnb to make some extra money. He lived alone in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb outside of Atlanta, Georgia. He figured it would be easy. A few guests here and there, some passive income, minimal effort. For the first few months, everything went smoothly. He hosted college students visiting the area, traveling nurses, and a few business professionals. Most guests stayed for a few nights and left without issue. Then, in September of that year, Victor received a booking request from a man named Thomas. The reservation was for 2 weeks, longer than most of his guests, but the money was good, and Thomas's profile seemed normal. He was in his early 40s, had a few positive reviews, and said he was relocating to the area for work. Victor accepted the booking. Thomas arrived on a Thursday evening. He was quiet and polite, but something about him felt off. Victor couldn't put his finger on it at first. Thomas avoided eye contact. He spoke in short, clipped sentences, and he always seemed to be listening, and even when no one was talking. Still, Victor brushed it off. Not everyone is a social butterfly. Some people just like to keep to themselves. The first week passed without incident. Thomas stayed in his room most of the time. He'd come out to use the kitchen occasionally, but he never lingered. He never made small talk. He was like a ghost, living in Victor's house. Then, on the 8th day, something changed. Victor came home from work and noticed that the guest bedroom door was wide open. Thomas wasn't inside. His suitcase was still there, his clothes still in the closet, but Thomas himself was nowhere to be found. Victor checked the rest of the house. Empty. He assumed Thomas had just gone out for a walk or to grab food, but something felt wrong. The house felt different, like someone had been going through things. He checked his own bedroom. His dresser drawers were slightly open, his closet door was ajar, and on his nightstand, his watch, which he always left in the same spot, had been moved. Victor told himself he was imagining things. Maybe he just forgot to close the drawers. Maybe he moved the watch himself and didn't remember. That night, he locked his bedroom door before going to sleep, just in case. Around 3 a.m., Victor woke up to the sound of his doorknob turning, slowly, deliberately, like someone was testing to see if it was locked. He held his breath and stared at the door. The knob turned again, then again. Then it stopped. He heard footsteps moving away from the door, down the hallway, back toward the guest room. The next morning, Victor confronted Thomas. He asked him point blank if he had tried to open his bedroom door in the middle of the night. Thomas stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled, a strange, hollow smile, and said, "I must have been sleepwalking. Sorry about that." Victor didn't believe him. That day, while Thomas was out, Victor searched the guest room. He didn't know what he was looking for. Maybe just some reassurance that he was overreacting. What he found was the opposite. Hidden under the mattress was a notebook. Inside, Thomas had written detailed notes about Victor's daily routine: what time he left for work, what time he came home, what he ate, what TV shows he watched. There were even notes about Victor's sleeping patterns: what time his bedroom light turned off, what time he usually woke up. But the most disturbing entry was on the last page. It simply read, "He trusts me now. Almost time." Victor's blood went cold. He didn't wait for Thomas to come back. He called the police immediately. He packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. He told the Airbnb support line everything and demanded they cancel the reservation and remove Thomas from the platform. When police arrived at the house later that evening, Thomas was gone. He had taken all of his belongings and vanished. The only thing left behind was the notebook. Investigators were able to identify Thomas using his Airbnb profile information. His real name wasn't Thomas. It was Marcus Webb. He had a criminal record that included breaking and entering, stalking, and assault. He was never found. Victor sold the house 3 months later. He said he couldn't sleep there anymore. Every creak, every shadow, every sound in the night reminded him of those 2 weeks. He told me that the thing that haunts him most isn't what Thomas or Marcus might have been planning. It's the fact that he let a stranger into his home. He gave him a key. He trusted him. And he almost paid for that trust with his life. If this story kept you up tonight, good. That means you're paying attention. Stay safe. And whatever you do, trust your instincts.